have the all go ahead here from both sides. So once again, welcome to Local Control, Clean Energy Opportunities in Local Business and Governments. Welcome both to our audience here on Zoom, as well as we're linked up on Facebook Live as well. Local Control is a webinar produced in partnership between the Minnesota Conservative Energy Forum and the Minnesota Land and Liberty Coalition as part of the nationwide celebration of National Clean Energy Week. National Clean Energy Week, which was recognized in the Minnesota Senate just earlier today, is an annual celebration of innovation in clean energy and a meeting of the minds in the energy space across the nation and in Washington, D.C. Lasting this year from September 21st to the 25th, we at MnCEF and the Land and Liberty Coalition are happy to be celebrating. I will be one of your hosts tonight. I am Adam Seidel, Executive Director of the Minnesota Conservative Energy Forum. We also have our other host here, Alex Pouliot, the Field Director of the Minnesota Land and Liberty Coalition. What we're talking about tonight, in clean and affordable energy, we're often talking about big, broad goals, statewide policy and the impact of technology and policy choices, national security issues debated in Congress across the country in DC, or even worldwide conversations dealing with big long-term environmental issues or climate issues. But that is not what we're here to talk about tonight. Tonight, we want to keep our feet planted firmly on the ground and think local in our local communities, the impact on local communities. And we have three public servants here joining us, all of them with experience as running businesses and working in business environments, also local officials, and they've all felt the impact of renewable energy in their careers with their businesses and families, as well as in their public service, the impact that it can have on their communities and taxpayers, and what a local government clean energy product conversation and decision-making process looks like at the local level. So I'm grateful to all three of these panelists for joining us, and I'll just take a moment to introduce all three right now, starting with Dario Anselmo, who is a 20-year resident of the city of Edina. After starting his first company at age 21, he has worked in several small business ventures, from commercial real estate to restaurants and bars, including being owner of the Fine Line Music Cafe. As part of his business advocacy, he co-founded the Warehouse Business District Association and is a longtime member of the Minneapolis Business Council. Dario previously served as a representative in the Minnesota State House of Representatives and is currently a candidate on the ballot in the general election for Hennepin County Commissioner. Dario Anselmo, and this is normally where if we could be in front of people right now with people, there would be wonderful, polite, loud applause. But unfortunately, that's not the case on webinar. So we move right along to our second panelist is Cary Alderson, a landowner and operator in Pipestone County in southwest Minnesota, where he raises row crops and grazes his significant herd of cattle. He also farms the land for some of his, owned by some of his fellow family members in the area, and is a lifetime resident of southwest Minnesota. And in fact, some 20 years ago, and we'll have a great opportunity to talk about this, his family was involved in some of the original earliest wind leases in the Buffalo Ridge area, one of the greatest wind resource producing areas in the entire nation. And Cary also serves on the Pipestone County Zoning and Planning Commission. And Cary Alderson. And our last but not least panelist, Brad Greskowiak, currently completing his first term on the City Council of the City of Coon Rapids, Minnesota, where he is currently running as a candidate this November for re-election. An engineer by training, Brad is an experienced businessman currently working in a Fortune 500 company environment, but also previously having been an owner and operator of two different small business ventures in the past. Originally coming from Minnesota's Iron Range, Brad completes our clean sweep of lifelong Minnesotans on our panel, and we're happy to have him joining us as well. So Brad Greskowiak. Well, thank you all three of you for joining us tonight, and I have a somewhat similar question to start off for all three of you, with a slightly different twist for each of you, and it's really about what got you interested in this conversation in the first place, whether it was more in the past in your history or a more recent interest. And Dario, I'd like to start with you and getting a little bit of a chance to talk about this before the webinar. I know it ties back to your interest in clean water. So what got you interested in the clean energy conversation?
Well, great. Great segue. Clean water, and I talked about it in a lot of different ways. This is a land of 10,000 lakes. We appreciate things like clean water, clean air, and I think clean energy. We're a state of innovators. When I moved from Duluth moved down to the Twin Cities and grew up right behind a little company called Medtronic. And they of course were making pacemakers, and now they're internationally known. But that innovation is what is made us such a special place. And I think we are the leaders in so many things, and I hope that we can continue to do that in a lot of technologies. But I love the idea of clean energy, and I'll get a chance maybe to talk about this later. I love it so much that I decided to put solar panels on our house, as the market and the cost made sense for me. And that's kind of what really got me sold on it a little over 4.5 years ago. And that was before I ran for the state house and later got to serve at the Capitol and weigh in on a few of those issues.
Well, thanks, Brad. Again, I have a similar question for you. I know that your interest, getting to know you, was spurred from starting to explore some municipal projects and possibilities.
That's correct. Actually, I'm fairly new to this, and what I'm hoping to take from this is I'm looking to learn more about market-driven renewable energy opportunities that really could benefit the taxpayers of our community. And I think if done right, that same thing could provide some substantial economic benefits in the long term for our community. So that's really what's brought me to the table tonight.
Well, thanks, Brad. And Cary, I'm maybe most especially interested in yours. We had a chance to talk earlier today as I spoke with all the panelists, and your history, I mentioned in your intro, the experience in renewable energy projects goes really back to the very beginning of real large commercial scale development in the state of Minnesota. So the deep history there, and how did that first bring itself to you?
Yeah, that's kind of my interest on this, because I have lived and farmed around wind turbines for over 20 years. Some of the first development in the state of Minnesota was down here in the southwest corner where we're located. Excuse me, NSP at the time, which is part of Excel now, was looking to put up a large 100 megawatt, if not larger, wind farm for the state of Minnesota. And southwest corner of the state on the Buffalo Ridge where we're located was the prime collection for wind energy, because the wind always blows down here. Our altitude here is some of the highest points in the state of Minnesota. Though fun fact about the Buffalo Ridge is also the watershed between the Mississippi River and the Missouri River. A couple of the farms we farm, half the farm goes down to the Redwood, into the Minnesota, into the Mississippi, and half the farm runs towards South Dakota. So it's yeah, the wind blows down here all the time. So that's kind of where they chose to put the turbines. And so on some of my family's property, I think in '95 is when they signed the original easement to give them rights to go out there and put up the farm. And I think it was around 97 or 8 is when it got put up. And those turbines were operational until this last year. They kind of ran their lifespan. And so they went through a repower project this last year in 2019, and I was kind of directly involved in a lot of that. So my farm currently has some new turbines on that they were repowered with. Larger, more efficient, smaller footprint out in the area. And so yeah, I've kind of lived around them, been around them my entire life, and seen a lot of the benefits from them. So it's been very interesting.
Well, Cary, I want to start our conversation with all three of you off by touching on something that you just brought up, that recent repower project out there, and you just referenced it a little bit. You had a lead role in some ways in working with all the landowners and the developers who were running the project and installing the development. And what can you tell us about that process between the landowners, the community, and the developers?
The way that kind of got put together is the land that was acquired for the easements of the turbines back in the 90s had a little strip right across the top of the ridge, and with these larger turbines they needed more acreage to kind of spread these turbines out a little bit more. And so it's a unique situation where you had existing easements in place, then you had some properties along the side where they're looking for new easements, and a lot of the landowners really didn't know what was going on and kind of which avenue to go. And then myself and then another neighbor landowner kind of got together and kind of hosted a couple meetings, talked to a lot of landowners, and was turned it into a group negotiation, I guess. And then us two, along with the help of an attorney that specializes in that, were kind of the main lead liaisons between the the developers and the landowners, and kind of our main role is to keep the communication lines open, make sure everything ran smoothly, and solve whatever problems that came up. You know, any type of development, there's always hiccups in the road, and we worked to find solutions for all of them, and through everything it went pretty smooth.
You know, Brad, you've seen this as a city councilman. You've seen this kind of process from the municipal side, and you know, just how important is it when there's community conversation, there's a developer, there's the government side, and there's the local stakeholders and local landowners or local, you know, impacted community. How important is that to have good dialogue as part of that process when you're reviewing a project of any kind in the city?
Well, in terms of this, we are really new to this as a community, and again, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to join this forum tonight, is to learn a little bit more about this. But I do know this. I mean, the fact of the matter is that we've got infrastructure in the city of Coon Rapids that I believe could support solar panels, and with energy going back into the grid, and you know, providing economic and taxpayer benefit. And as a policymaker, I want to learn as much as I can about this entire process so I can bring it to the rest of the council and others with our city, and forward these things. So,
well, let's talk a little bit about that. About that direct benefit, and I'll get Dario involved by referencing the solar that you said that you have on your home now, and start off with that. You know, tell us about how that has impacted your family, you know, environmentally, your budget, savings, how, you know, what it was like to install, how that process went.
Oh, it was great to have a lot of friends that were involved in clean energy, and here in Edina, besides having lots of hockey ice rinks and shopping malls, we seem to have a lot of people involved in a lot of innovative companies. Geronimo Energy is based out of here, and now they're bought by a British company. But it was great to have friends that are involved in that space. And so I talked to 3 companies, you know, had them come out. We were redoing a Rambler in Edina, which there's lots of. We have a great southwest facing roof. And they said there was room for up to, you know, 45, maybe 60 panels. We decided to go with 30 panels. And because my wife's an interior designer, they had to be black and stainless so they would fit in with the decor of our house. That's a true story. We were actually featured on a TV presentation for Fox KSTP to talk about, you know, clean energy and how you can make it work in the suburbs where maybe people didn't want to look at, you know, solar panels all over. The price was fairly affordable for a home renovation, $25,000. We were able to get some credits for doing that, and with the money that we're saving, it's about a break even about 5 or 6 years. Probably 3 years before that, the break even was 10 years. So as the prices come down, as the incentives were in place, it makes more and more sense. So you know, I tell people it's a good business decision. It's a good moral decision, and it's, you know, it's something that we're really happy about, and we're happy to share the story and the experience. And I think as the market gets there, more and more people, you know, sort of will do the right thing. There's always the innovators, and then there's the followers, and you know, I would put myself somewhere in between there. And you know, it's been a great experience for us. It's also fun because I've got a little app on my phone that I can pull out if I ever need to, and show people how we're doing and how much energy we're saving. You can't really probably see all that, and I can actually tell people we've saved 474 trees. So that's the carbon recapture equivalent of what we're doing by using solar energy.
So Adam, I would like to ask the panelists a question here. As you know, governments allow these kind of projects, how important is it, especially Cary, Dario, and Brad, to have the government, you know, kind of respect property rights and allow these kind of projects to go forward? Because that's what in Land Delivery we always talk about. We want to respect people's property rights, and how important is it to have a governing body that would respect property rights, you know, allow the panels on the houses or even the wind turbines in fields. So we'll start with Cary then.
Yeah, I can speak on that a little bit. Through the process down here in the repower, I learned a lot about the Public Utilities Commission in the state of Minnesota, how much they do in governing a lot of what happens in the development of this. And I have to say they did a really good job down by us. They were very thorough. The developer comes in with the plan of what they want to do, how it's going to be developed, where things are going to get placed, and there's all kinds of studies that go on in the background, core samples and different things, and make sure if it's feasible in that area. And through that entire process, the Public Utilities Commission, they're watching through all that, and they're the ones that give out the permits to move forward and things like that. And I thought they did a wonderful job down by us, and that's one of their things, is to make sure they respect the property rights and the rights of the owners and things like that. And you do want to be respectful towards that. And if you keep the communication lines open with the developer, and just be very thorough with everything, and just make sure you maintain that. They would like to put it up. They would like to develop it as much as you'd like to have it there, but you are correct. You got to watch out for, and make sure you maintain the integrity of your property at all times. And I think they did a real good job.
Brad, I'm sure that's something that you deal with on the city council as well. Again, maybe not with regard specific to renewable developments as often, but always an important consideration, I'm sure.
Now, private property rights, they are forefront for the city of Coon Rapids. The city of Coon Rapids may be a little bit different than Buffalo Ridge, of course, because we are a very well-developed city, and there isn't that much open land available. And so what we're looking for is to provide options for homeowners, which we do, and also to work with the various landowners in terms of the zonings, the different zonings that are throughout our city, best and highest use of those lands, and again, promoting market-driven options for our community.
Cary, serving on the zoning and planning committee out there in Pipestone County, is it a similar process to what you just heard Brad describe in the city work?
Yes, it is very similar. For the short time that I've been on the zoning there, of course, so it's kind of through COVID, so we didn't have a whole lot of meetings, but we're in an agricultural country, so some of the stuff that would come across us are, we're looking at feedlots and different things that would be more adapt to a rural community. But we do see some utilities, one of the zonings I was on, where they needed to put in some collection line poles. They needed to move them over a little bit and kind of replace them. And sometimes they need just special use variances or things like that. And that's kind of what I was sitting in on. And so it's a very similar process, just a little bit different on the rural.
So Carol, I want to follow up with you. We heard from Dario Cary about his, he's owning and hosting a development at the smallest scale, on the residential scale of the solar industry. The developments that you're hosting on your land are lease rights, and they're the total other, the big wind projects. We've heard about how it impacts and produces savings for Dario. I'm curious about you as an operating landowner. What is the impact of that to the bottom line as you're making your margins on a year-to-year basis?
The way it works for us on the lease like that, we're actually leasing out the leasing out the wind rights for an easement on the property for them to put up that turbine to collect that wind. So we don't own that turbine; it's owned by that company. But then we get the lease payment, which is annual. It's very important because I think anybody who runs a small business can realize how tight your margins do get. Working on your cash flows every year, and the farming communities had their share of ups and downs throughout everything. And when you can supplement any time of supplement coming into your cash flow, it makes the bankers a lot happy to make sure you get financing again for the following year. To run a farm, it takes very high overhead, to get that crop in the ground and the machinery to get that all done. And, whether it's outside job or you're working with livestock, however you can supplement it, that's just another avenue to do so. And so those lease payments do come in very handy in situations like that. And that's kind of on the spectrum I'm at, because it is a big commercial development where we're at. There are some independent ones along the side, a few independent owned turbines here and there, but we're involved in where, we're just doing the lease to the farm. Well,
Dario and Brad, I know both of you in your small business background never hosted a development on your small business properties, but both of you, I would imagine, can speak to. And this question is for either of you, whoever wants to speak up first or or go ahead is how an additional revenue source like that could impact whether it's a small business or a body shop or a restaurant or a body shop, or how that impacts the margins in a commercial facility like that.
I'd go ahead.
Well, anytime there's a savings, that's going to go a long way when you're a small business owner. I've owned a couple of small businesses, and as Cary mentioned, we're working on the fringes a lot of times. So if there is any economic benefit to that, it's going to be very well accepted, of course. And on a larger scale, and again, I'm not speaking for the city of Coon Rapids, just a person that happens to be on the city council. Oops, excuse me. I realize on a larger scale that this could bring a pretty substantial savings to our taxpayers. Absolutely.
Well, that's a good segue, Brad. So, we talked a little bit about some of, I like, you're thinking creatively about how you can generate those taxpayer savings from when you and I spoke. And, I'm just curious about discussing a few of your ideas a little bit and sort of how you came to them as well.
Well, really, again, city and myself both new to this process, but one thing that spurred my interest is the concept of solar gardens. For example, the city of Coon Rapids has a brand new 62,000 square foot roof on its city center. I know that is large enough to support a large solar array, and don't get me wrong, I'm not in favor of the city of Coon Rapids becoming any kind of municipal entity in the utility, rather than a private developer could potentially lease that from us, set up the solar garden, and then we could reap the benefits of the lower utility rate. So that's really what is spurring my interest right now. And again, trying to learn as many of these forums as I can get to, so that I can bring these types of things to my colleagues at the city, and we can have this conversation and forward these ideas.
Well, Dario, I have a follow-up for you on that, but I realize that I haven't mentioned this at all yet to any of our attendees. For those on Zoom, we are going to be doing a Q&A for the last few minutes of this, an opportunity to ask audience questions. All you need to do to submit a question is you just go down to the Q&A button there, the two little speech bubbles on the bottom of your screen. If you wiggle your mouse around, you should see it. You can enter in a question there and submit it, and we will have a few minutes at the end for questions from the audience. So I would encourage you to, as we go through this, think of what you might want to ask all of our panelists or a specific one of our panelists as they're speaking. And I'm sorry I didn't mention that until just now. Dario, what Brad just said, he's talking about a municipal building, but you have a ton of experience both as an owner and just in the general commercial real estate market. This is a hot part of the market right now. We've talked about your residential project, kind of the smallest scale portion of the distributed energy markets. Cary hosting the absolute top biggest utility scale wind development projects. But the commercial market is really exciting in a lot of ways and kind of in that middle. Have you seen a lot of that? Maybe either worked with it yourself or in your industry, seen the revenue potential in that, or seen that take hold in the industry?
It kind of depends, and I've got friends in lots of different segments. The buildings that I own, and where the fine line is still, which is unfortunately not operating next door. We've got a commercial building that's attached to it. It's a long, narrow building, so solar makes a little less sense there than our suburban home that's nicely spread out. My friends are in industrial real estate. That's where solar has made sense for them. Wind turbines in an urban or inner ring suburban area don't really make a lot of sense. But energy conservation has been a huge thing for a lot of buildings and a lot of businesses down there. It's the single biggest source of energy cost and waste is through lack of conservation. So as the technology gets there, as the innovation gets there, the opportunity to invest in those things has made sense. So we did that throughout our building. We made a $20,000 investment to do that, which ends up paying for itself in around 3 years, 4 years. So that's a big place. And I say as a state representative, it was great to have the opportunity, even though I didn't serve on the Energy Jobs Committee, to go tour those facilities, because a lot of them were in Edina and Eden Prairie and that Golden Triangle that are coming up with all of these technologies. And it's about storage, and it's about ways to do things to save energy as much as just producing and having a revenue, stream, which is great, in other parts of our state. So it's nice to see that there are different tranches of how you can participate in clean energy, in saving money, and doing some good things for the environment.
That is a good point. I'm glad you brought up the efficiency and savings part of it. That's sometimes the redheaded stepchild of the energy conversation is the energy and savings part, but we can save so much money in that piece of it, so much money and time and generation, just as we can in anything else. We had a webinar on that. Is a bit of a detour, but we had a webinar on that a couple of months ago, and Senator Jason Rarick pointed out that saving money and saving energy and conservation just makes sense. It's common sense and it saves money. All right, I got a little overexcited about that, but I want to step back a moment and don't worry about it. Halfway through our time here, and I don't want to miss the opportunity to talk to Cary a little bit about the origins of the development on the Buffalo Ridge and your experience in that. You talked about it a little bit, but how have you seen the community's reaction to the proposal of these developments change from the very first developments coming in when someone said, we want to build this technology here on a commercial scale, versus how people react towards it now here over 20 years later?
Sure. I can touch on that. And there is a difference. 20 years ago, my dad was a big portion of in the negotiations of doing that. And the perspective of a lot of the property owners back then was this was new to everybody. Even the developer at the time, which was NSP coming in to do that, it was new to them also. They wanted to construct it. So everybody was just kind of working on new territory. So whenever you're going someplace you're unaware of, you're always thinking safety first. Okay, what if, you always tiptoe into it slowly. And, it's one of the main concerns of property owners back then was, is this company going to go bankrupt in 5 years and then sit with this turbine sitting on my land? Well, there was stuff in the easements to make sure that didn't happen. And the asset did change hands a few times over the years, but it always stayed operational and always kept going. Since then, everybody's seen the benefits of having that wind energy in the area, that it is clean energy. And then there is also revenue or tax revenues that come into the area. I can't speak on how that's divvied out, in the area to what percentages get spent where. I'm not exactly sure, but we do see benefits to that coming in, and we do know there's revenue. So everybody's attitude towards wind development since then has improved. I would say majority of them are all in favor of it. You always have a few that are opposed for their reasons, and we respect that. But so now in the newer developments, people aren't so skeptical. They're a little bit more in there. They're just just kind of working out the details mostly. I think a lot of the property owners would be willing to participate in a development, and a lot less skepticism than we've seen back in the day. So that's good to see.
Have you seen an impact from a development standpoint? And I don't mean even a renewable energy development standpoint. I just mean projects in general, the towns in the county and ancillary businesses, things like that. Have you seen a difference in that just from the over the last 20 years, from the additional economic activity being brought in as some of these developments have come?
Yes, we have, especially through the construction phase. You have all kinds of people and businesses and different aspects of the construction come through for the year to put that in, and obviously that helps all the small businesses in the area because it brings all that revenue in. Once the construction is done, it kind of settles down into the maintenance and repairs of them. So it does create jobs. As people will locate into the area for that. I've seen some of the local colleges start to bring in different classes on wind energy and how to service the turbines and different things like that. And I've seen developers work together with the colleges to where they donate, like on the repower in our area, some of the turbines that were taken down are donated to like Minnesota West and Canby to use for training. So kind of seen some of that going on also. And through everything, it does boost the, especially in rural areas, it boosts the economy because, there isn't a whole lot of transportation coming through here, people around. And whenever you create more jobs like that, even on a small scale, really benefits rural areas.
And you're talking about everything down to the maintenance workers that are operating on these things, right? When you're talking about the training programs.
Yes, on those training programs, at the colleges, that's what they're training for, is the maintenance, because there's always maintenance to them. There's people that have to run them and take care of them, and there's parts that need to be replaced. That all needs to be done, and it takes a crew of people, and so there's always a crew on site that are employed after the construction's done, and then that's new jobs that are created into that area, which all that helps the economics of the area.
Brad, I've heard you speak before about some of the community benefits of what kind of things you'd be looking to attract by the development ideas that you've come up with. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, I like Cary's point about the economic development, because actually I see renewable clean energy options as more than just a cost savings. I see it as part of the community's overall sustainability policy. And when I say sustainability, not just from a sheer energy conservation standpoint. For instance, if a city is seen as a leader in renewable energy, that's attractive to businesses, new businesses, small businesses. So those types of things help our city attract and retain businesses. And, as we all know, those businesses are the backbone of our economic base. So, therefore, if we can attract those businesses, they're sustaining our community's viability well into the future. So those are other things that I think about too when we talk about these market-driven approaches.
Dario, you've been studying up on Hennepin County's approach towards that same issue that Brad just brought up. What have you seen in that, and what ideas have you come up with as you investigated that piece at the county level?
Well, like a lot of government units, there's a lot of talk about climate change, sustainability. I have to remind, and I had to tell the 5 other candidates I was running against, and now there's down to 2, that this job is actually not about climate change. It's about sustainability. It's about clean energy. It's about water conservation. The original, sort of segue point that you gave me. That's what Hennepin County deals with. It has the ability to influence that by how it runs its own facilities. So sort of like what Cary's doing in his community and Brad will do there, Hennepin County gets to do that with its facilities. So it does it at its public works facility out in Medina, where it's got 500 solar panels. So, that's great to do. Hennepin County owns, 41 libraries. It's got HCMC. It's got a lot of facilities. So it can do sustainability within its own footprint, but it's not going to change policy. It's not going to change markets. So it gets to be out in front. It gets to talk about it. And I think that's great and it's wonderful. I just like to be very realistic about it. I'm very much of a clean energy, clean environment person. I'm, maybe more so than some people would like at times. But you've got to lead people there, and it's got to make economic sense. Like, I didn't put solar panels on my roof until they made economic sense, because there's just not enough reasons. If you add in extra things like externalities, the cost of polluting is way more expensive than having to clean it up. That's why we have clean air, and it's great that we have organizations like Fresh Energy that have been talking about that in Clean Energy Minnesota, and it's great to have the Minnesota Clean Energy Forum, finding another pathway for people that might be a little more resistance to that. And so in Hennepin County, you just have a bigger footprint to basically do what the 3 of us as panelists are trying to do in our individual communities, for our homes and our businesses. But that's the big impact, is leading by example. But it's got to make economic sense. Otherwise, people aren't going to do it.
So I have a question that will go to both Brad and Dario. We talk about government bringing in these economic developments and the revenue that it can create for the community. I want to talk to you guys about what that means for the taxpayer. I mean, how can we transition that and talk about the taxpayer benefits? And I'll start with you, Brad.
Well, the number one tax benefit to our taxpayers, I should say, the economic benefit to our taxpayers is, again, if we're expanding our business base, that that supports a lot of things in our community. So if we can attract businesses because of the fact that we have clean energy options and we're a clean energy champion in our community, that goes a long way. There is also the obvious taxpayer benefit if we could, you know, start to create and use some of our own produced energy that offsets our own utility costs. That's, again, right to the bottom line. So it really is multifaceted, multiple levels of benefit to the taxpayer if you can do this the right way, and again, in a market-driven atmosphere.
You know, I mean, two big things that, Hennepin County does, of course, it runs the HERC, which is the people call it the incinerator. The HERC, I'm not sure if that's the best name for it either. I'm looking forward to getting an inside tour at some point. And it's also running light rail, which is a really, really expensive clean energy project that goes on and goes on throughout Hennepin County and the metro area. So there's ways it has impact, but when it does these savings, Hennepin County is paid for by your property taxes. So Hennepin County has got 1/5 of the state's population inside of it. 1/3 of the jobs in the state of Minnesota are created in Hennepin County. So it's the largest county in the 10-state area. So it's a huge impact, but it's your property taxes. So you might be able to move to Florida and not pay some taxes here, but if you own property, you're going to get charged by your county, and Hennepin County is the biggest taxpayer and collector. So those savings are really important to taxpayers. And I tell people property taxes just don't matter for someone who has got a house or a building and they just want to pay a little less. That affects people that are on fixed incomes. So when we talk about affordable housing, it's about having affordable taxes, having cleaner energy, having ways to reduce those costs for everyone is a good thing in just so many ways. It just, it's an exponential equation, but it's a big impact in Hennepin County.
Brad, I'm curious how you've talked a couple times now about how business, the power to attract businesses through clean energy options. Is that something you've been hearing from the business community in Coon Rapids now, and how does that message come? So,
well, it's just another way to market our community to businesses. We have a very robust economic development division within Coon Rapids. And again, all these things play a factor into how you're going to create and attract businesses. So, it all fits together.
So what Brad, in your business background, or is it your business background that causes you to really think about it from the local business perspective?
Well, I'm not exactly sure how to answer that question. I might want to pass it to one of the other panelists. But it's what I'm hearing out there. I mean, it's the future, and it's coming, and we want to be on the forefront of it to be there. Yeah.
I think that's a great answer. Dario, do you have the same question for you, Dario?
Yeah, I mean, my business background goes back to, and it really started with my parents. Besides watching Vikings games, we had required reading in our house. So, reading books from Milton Friedman, like Free to Choose, were sort of early jumping points. And having an Apple II computer, growing up, when I was a senior in high school, was a pretty innovative thing. It got me involved in wanting to start a computer company. So for me, it was about ideas and innovation. And that's what drives, our economy. And those are the sort of things that sort of have taken, me to the point to want to make those smart investments and those decisions. And I think a lot of other people, I mean, I'm not sure how many agriculture communities, hopped into, having wind turbines in their space, but I've got to imagine that Minnesota was probably one of the first places in the country to do that. So, that innovation, that sort of market driven, how do we sustain ourselves? How do we survive? I mean, who moves to Minnesota in the first place? So, someone in our family did, and they were resilient, strong, innovative people. And that's what's great. And so for me, that's what's in my DNA, was being around ideas, innovation, and got me into my first business, and probably made me more likely than my neighbor to decide to want to put solar panels on my house, and carry through with that in a position when I could make policies and later lead at state government and God willing at county government after November.
Well, I think we're going to take a few questions from the audience here, the couple that have come in. And again, if anyone wants to add a question to the list, they can click on the Q&A button on the bottom of the Zoom panel. That's for our attendees on Zoom. I like this first one here. Cary, what's the difference between the first developments you experienced and then for the latest developments, and how is it better or worse in terms of the relationship and going through the process and the relationship with the developer?
One of the biggest differences is technology has come such a long way in 20 years. The turbines that they replace these with are 3 times the size. So they got the ability to produce, 3 times amount of power per turbine. So there's less turbines on the landscape. They're spread out further. I think they're large enough now, for repower, they probably don't have to do a full construction. They can just, replace the parts that need to be replaced. And then the technology in the operation of it, they're quieter, they run smoother. I think there's a lot more testing going in to looking at different things to make sure that it's less of an impact on the area. And it's like anything, they've learned a lot in the last 20 years, from when they first put them up. And then when you learn from them, you make improvements. And then working with the companies, I think that's going better because now that we've been around them for a long time, we know they do work. We do like them. We do think it's one piece of the puzzle of clean energy. And if you keep the communication lines open with them, they want to work with the landowners just as much as landowners want to work with them. So everybody's, a lot more on board of trying to get more clean energy out there.
All right, the next question here, and the question is for Cary, but I want to ask both Cary and Dario this question. I'm going to put my own spin on it for Dario, and I'll start with you. What would you, Dario, tell another homeowner who is interested in solar and trying to decide if it's right for them? What advice would you give about going through that process?
And I've had that question asked by a lot of people, and I'm sure people thought I did it because I was in public service, and I talk about being a conservationist all the time, and I try to be that gateway between the mandators and the deniers and the free market people, somewhere in between, and saying look at the options. Does this make sense to you? So if you can make this investment and get your money back in probably down to 4 years, why would you not do it? So it just seems to make sense. If you're going to put money in the stock market, who knows what's going to happen? Here you're putting money into your home, you're saving energy, you're doing a good thing. It just makes a lot of sense. And the options are way easier. When I first looked at it, I talked to my first campaign manager, who of all things worked for a company that Duke Energy, I think, now owns, that does wind farm and turbine maintenance, and again was out generating jobs and doing all these things. So it's really cool if a person appreciates all the business upstream things that are going on. But when you just look at it from what's in it for you, which is what I think that's what most humans do, here it is. So go ahead, look at these companies. In our case, there's one right in our backyard you can do business with, which is nice.
Cary, the original question was for you, and it was about if another landowner came to you and they said, hey, there's a development coming to our area, we're a little bit newer to it, what would you tell that landowner? Well, that's the question. What would you tell a landowner who is learning about it for the first time?
Well, first and foremost, educate themselves, just what they're doing right now. Talk to people that are around them, people that have gone through them, and don't be scared of it. Wind energy is kind of, like I said earlier, is one piece of the puzzle. It's you want to diversify wherever you can. Get the combination of solar and wind and hydro, whichever type of renewable you want to use. Get the combination together is kind of what makes it work. And so someone looking into doing that, start open the communication lines with the different companies. Look at your options, explore it. Don't be scared of it. And it's worked out by us for many years, and I think it's a great way to go.
A question for Brad is what type or amount of taxpayer savings do you think you can expect for what you've described or what other cities have you talked to that have done similar things?
I'm actually just starting these conversations right now, and there's a lot of professional companies that can help us with this. But at first glance, with the size of the roof that we're looking at right now, it looks like from the get-go, with no capital outlay from the taxpayers of Coon Rapids, there could be at least $100,000 annual savings by moving this forward, and that's just our first estimate. And so it's pretty exciting, and I want to learn a lot more about, get myself educated, and then bring these policy debates to the full council.
So Brad, I have a follow-up on that then myself. So as a city councilman, as a local policymaker, you're interested in a new field like this, you're taking part in a panel like this, and you've started to learn about it. What other things do you do to learn about a topic like this, to really decide what the best way to proceed or what the best way to start moving as a city is?
Well, the first thing is I'm just one person on a body of 7. So there's 5 council members, there's an at-large, and there's a mayor. So the first thing to do is to build some consensus and bring these ideas forward in workshops, and then have the debate with the other council members, because a lot of the other council members, I mean, we have an engineer as a council member, another engineer as a council member, we've got an attorney as a council member. So really getting everyone to the table, I think, is the biggest thing that I can do to help start this and get the dialogue going.
Well, I'm glad you talked about consensus, because I think I've heard all 3 of you talk about that tonight, and you know, it's really one of the focuses we wanted to make this event about. Like I said at the start, this event, there were plenty of events. There were dozens and dozens of events across the country for National Clean Energy Week that had a lot of them with very high-minded topics. What's the future over the next many decades of energy across the world? We really wanted to talk about the local process, and so much of that is about consensus building, whether it's Cary's work with landowners and developers in that process, or Brad, the process that you described and Dario has talked about as well. So I promised all 3 of you, as well as our attendees, that once we got close to an hour, we would be out of here. We got 2 of you who I know are currently campaigning on a daily basis, and Cary, you said that you're in the middle of harvest season here as well. So time is precious. So we'll be done with our Q&A here, and I just want to give each of the 3 of you, again, we thank you so much for being involved, and I don't want to cut it off before we just give any of the 3 of you a chance to say anything else that you didn't feel you had a chance to say yet. So Dario, I'll start with you for just a farewell thought.
I'm driven, to a lot of things I do by looking at, what our forefathers did before that. And I told people when I was in partisan politics, I was sort of a Roosevelt, Reagan Republican, and an individualist, a conservationist. And if you want to see a cleaner, greener, and cheaper future in your community, it's not just about mandates, it's about letting the market drive us there. And we need to do that and let those innovations take us in the right direction, and people will do the right thing and go with clean energy.
Cary, any closing thoughts from you?
I agree a lot of what Dario was just saying there. I think things will just kind of fall into place. There's so many people that are in favor of clean energy, just need the opportunities to do so. And once those opportunities present themselves, I think a lot of people will be on board with that. And diversification between the different clean energies, get it spread out, I think is the key to just making everything work. It's just one piece of the puzzle.
Well, thank you. And Brad, final thoughts from you?
Thanks for inviting me. I'm learning things every day as I go on this. And I guess I'd just like to say that, I'm a listener and I'm a consensus builder. And the more information that I can get on this subject, the farther that our community will be in the long run. So again, appreciate the opportunity tonight.
Well, all 3 of you, thank you very much. Cary Alderson, Dario Anselmo, and Brad Greskowiak joining us here on Local Control tonight, as part of the National Clean Energy Week celebration. And we've come to the end of our time, but we appreciate it from all three of you. This will be available. We will have a recording on our website and on YouTube. Perhaps you're watching it there now, and it's on Facebook Live, so it should be archived there. I think this is the first time we've done anything on Facebook Live, but I believe it just sits there now. That's what I've seen when I've been on Facebook. So it will be available for future use. And with that, thank you to all three of you, and from the Minnesota Conservative Energy Forum, National Clean Energy Week, and the Minnesota Land and Liberty Coalition, good night.
Thank you.